Hello tailoring talkers, and welcome to Tailoring Talk with your host Roberto Revilla, bespoke tailor and owner of Roberto Revilla London Suit and Shirt Makers. The Bondathon rumbles on, and I have the big Moonraker spoiler review coming for you this Friday with a few surprises. It's fair to say, for those of you who listened to the Spy Who Loved Me review, you'll know that we weren't really bothered's probably not quite the right word, but not enthusiastic about Moonraker, so tune in for that one. But before that, as regular Bondathon listeners will know, Richard Gore, who's been on a couple of the reviews, loves a good old fight on a train in a Bond movie, and he was really disappointed to have missed out reviewing The Spy Who Loved Me with us. So here's a little bonus, as Rich and I met up in London on Saturday. So this was recorded live in Charlotte Street near my workroom, and Rich and I grabbed a bite to eat and had a little talk about The Spy Who Loved Me, and I got some of his views on that wonderful film. Enjoy. So we're in, where are we, Rich? We're in Ote, a little Turkish eatery just off Charlotte Street. Another Saturday morning with you, but a lot colder than last time, because last time it was about 38 degrees.
Yeah. Well, last time it was when we came up and I was in my linen suit and we went to Crockett's. I had an aborted attempt at going to Christie's.
Yeah.
You
look like an absolute baller in that linen suit as well.
Yeah, I did strut my funky stuff in that.
Totally. And you sat your funky stuff in it as well.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's a thing, but
I did.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, it was very, very hot. It is not that hot today.
No, it's freezing bloody cold. But we really missed you on The Spy Who Loved Me session. You were mentioned. I don't know if you've listened to that episode yet.
Not yet.
But you were mentioned. I believe your failure in life to not have watched Star Wars all the way through.
It was probably a topic of conversation.
Definitely came up, because there's always a tenuous Star Wars link somewhere.
Oh yeah.
Or it might have been in the Moonraker. I get confused because we record them so far ahead. But you were missed. And
thank you.
I remember when we got to the fight on the train bit.
Yep.
That's the point where I mentioned you and said something like, "Well, it's a shame Rich isn't here because he loves a fight on a train."
Love a fight on a train. Love trains full stop.
You love fights on trains in Bond films as well.
Yes. Yeah. Not just it doesn't have to be in real life.
So The Spy Who Loved Me. Does that? I know that you. Let's talk about the song first of all, because we actually didn't talk about the song enough because no one else liked it apart from me. Yeah, I know.
It's just one of it's up there. It's an amazing record. Kylie Simon's perfect. I love the way they link in the the title of the film into the song. Funny enough, I'm less keen on how it sounds in the film to how it sounds when you buy it elsewhere.
And you just listen to it.
And you just listen to it. Even if you buy the Bond collection themes, it's not the same version. It's a different version. The music in the film I was really interested in the music in the film because apart from the theme, but there was loads of disco throughout the film.
Very much so, yeah.
I kept on waiting.
And it sounded like, it's that riff from the Bee Gees, right?
It was. I was going, they're going to break into You Should Be Dancing any second.
Exactly.
It was pure Bee Gees throughout the film, and I'm like, yeah, this is definitely a product of its time, for sure. I mean, it was. I kept on listening, going, "This is disco. This is disco. This is disco," which is quite because James Bond has always been there for me. It's kind of timeless, and I watched most of them when I was a lot younger, so I didn't associate them with particular times. But with these in the 70s and 80s, I really notice how influenced they are. Like and we're about to move off the music, but like Roger Moore's flared suits.
Oh my god, because it was in that gun barrel sequence.
Yeah.
And we were sat there, and I said to Carolina, okay, it's the era of the flares, because
Yes.
I mean they took up almost all of that, the
That's
lower
right.
portion of that gun barrel circle, didn't
Yeah.
they?
Yeah.
It comes wafting in.
And I think, I mean, I don't have my notes with me, but I think on my notes I said Roger Moore looks fantastic, as always, because he just does,
Yeah.
and he carries a suit lovely. But, and the flares they're not massive flares, but yeah, you can tell that they're flared, you can tell they're a product of their time. So that stood out for me, but yeah, the theme's brilliant. Carly Simon is amazing, always. As I've mentioned to you before, I like to think that the producers heard You're So Vain and then went, yeah, she'll do, because she's already talking about that.
Yeah. Oh, which one's that? Which one's the one that's got mince? That one.
This one,
That's
yeah.
mine.
Yeah, and that one with the cheese.
Enjoy.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean, the other sort of standout thing from that film, obviously, is the opening sequence
Yes,
with the jump off the cliff.
yes, of course. And the Union flag parachute. Yeah, and I thought that set the scene really nicely, actually.
Well, it turned Bond into, and John mentioned this, I think, it suddenly turned Bond, from sort of suave secret agent to superhero status.
Yes, yeah. While still maintaining that hard edge of having just killed somebody.
Yeah, because the film overall was still kind of reasonably grounded. I mean, they
Yeah.
had to. Have you read the book? Because obviously the film's not based on it.
No, I haven't.
So the film's not based on it because they ran into problems with. I think it was a rights issue. I can't remember exactly.
Okay.
You know the bloke who they had a problem with for You Only Live Twice. I think it was. I can't remember his name, but they had another copywriting issue. Or something.
Okay.
Or it was that Fleming had basically only authorised them to use the title,
Yeah.
but they couldn't actually use the story because the original story was told from the Russian agent's point of view.
Oh.
So it was an entirely new script. And I thought they did a really, really good job because it's the first time they didn't really have the source material to work from.
Yeah.
How is that, by the way?
Very, very, very good.
Yeah, it looks very, very, very hot as well. That's
is.
why I'm going to keep talking, let mine cool down. And I thought from a story point of view it was great. I mean, they obviously went back to the similar sort of theme of You Only Live Twice because, instead of spaceships swallowing spaceships, it was, ships swallowing submarines.
Yeah.
This sounds really dirty, but I'm not talking in euphemisms.
No.
But I thought the plot and everything, the story was really good. I thought it was actually really well written.
Yeah, I thought so too, and it was quite funny. I watched it 2 or 3 times in readiness for us talking about it. And the first time I watched it, I thought, oh, that was boring. But the more I watched it, the more I appreciated it. It had a good plot, it had a good story, it was easy to follow. I had an issue with, funny enough, I had an issue with the Spy Who Loved Me, with the Russian, whose name I've forgotten off the top of my head.
What, Triple X?
Yeah. In that, they introduce her as a KGB agent, KGB officer, and it's very hard and proper KGB officer, and that's really good that they are showing her as that, but then quite quickly she becomes, at least towards the end of the film, she becomes just essentially another Bond girl, all simpering over Bond and having Bond to protect her. And I felt that there was a shift in it, and I felt they didn't do that as well as they could. They could have kept her as a
As a proper strong character.
yeah, that's right. I mean, she was a KGB officer.
Yeah, and she was a major as well, I think.
Yeah, she would have been a hard-nosed communist, or at least party line, and not afraid to kill people, easily as much as Bond. She wouldn't have needed Bond at all.
No.
And she starts off like that. I did like the beginning bit where you see her in bed with her boyfriend.
Yeah, and you assume the boyfriend
Yes,
is the
and you assume the
agent.
boyfriend is the agent, and then they switch.
Well, he was an agent.
Yes, because Bond kills him. And I did like that, and I thought they made that point nicely. And they kept it going for a decent amount of time. I mean, she gets the upper hand on Bond more than once. But then, as I say, towards the end, it was him rescuing her again. And I just thought, oh, you missed an opportunity. You let that slide and you didn't have to. But I thought she was a great character.
Yeah. No, I thought she was as well. What did you think of the villain? Because you had what's his name, Mr. Webbed Hands.
Yeah.
And which I didn't notice until much later in the film. Actually, they were very subtle with that, which I kind of appreciated. But it kind of made sense that someone who's trying to build this massive underwater Atlantis sort of thing would have webbed hands. But obviously, the star of the villain piece was Jaws, far and away.
Yeah, I thought the baddies were really good. You could definitely see their influence on later films, and how they were similar in fashion to previous villains as well. Bond is a great henchman. Sorry, not Bond. Jaws is a great henchman. I can remember being terrified of him when I was 7.
Me too.
First time I watched Moonraker. Maybe the reason I don't like Moonraker is I can remember watching it, much like you've mentioned, being plonked in front of the telly. It was me and my dad. My sister was in bed. My mum was out at work because she worked nights, and we were watching that. And then I got sent to bed, and I can remember coming back down and going, I can't go to sleep because I've just seen Jaws. Jaws scared me much more than Jaws, the film, did. When I then watched that with the shark,
The shark film terrified me. I couldn't even have a bath. I just wouldn't want to go into water full stop.
Jaws with the shark is probably the greatest horror film ever made. It's so we could have a 2-hour podcast talking about Jaws, because there's so many things they did in there that they hadn't done in any film before. There's all the different relationships between the actors, but it's moving away. But Jaws, Richard Gore Jaws, I think is brilliant.
I think it's just because he was just such a unstoppable force.
Yeah, that's right. And Bond probably hadn't met anybody like him before.
Oddjob was probably the closest.
Yeah, Oddjob was probably the closest. But Jaws kept on going. And what's nice to know is Richard Gore was a really nice guy, apparently.
Yeah,
everything I've read about him said he was lovely.
He had his family on set, like they travelled with him on location.
Yeah. No, he just seemed really nice.
It's really funny because watching it as an adult, and also because in Moonraker they then soften the character and they become allies.
Yeah.
And that's the other reason why I'd encourage you to. I know when we were like, "Who's coming for Moonraker?" and you were like, "Nah," and Phil was like, "Nah" as well. But the problem for Phil is that he started this thing with me. He needs to finish it. But there are some subtleties in his performance that I think you appreciate more as an adult than you did as a child. So I would strongly recommend watching it again. And also the fact that the thing to look out for is when the villain in Moonraker, Doctor whatever his stupid name is announcing to everybody what his nefarious plan is.
As all Bond villains do.
As all Bond villains do. Jaws recognises in that instant that he's not actually going to be part of that plan. and it's the audience is with him in that moment when he has that realization. Richard Kill's performance is brilliant.
No, sounds good.
And the other reason why I'd encourage you to watch it is it's actually held up really well, because the special effects were Oscar nominated and only lost out to Ridley Scott's Alien.
Yeah, that's like losing to Schumacher. You know, that's not bad.
So then back to the Spy Who Loved Me. So let's talk about gadgets. No, let's talk about the car. Another one of those cult
Lotus Esprit.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it made it into the film just because someone from Lotus basically parked one outside the production offices.
Yeah. Which was... What I love about things like that is you get the impression that those sorts of things wouldn't happen now. Basically, somebody in Lotus went, hang on a minute, we want our car in this, what's the best way to do it? Can't get them on the phone. All right, I'll just drive down there then, see what happens. They're a major company, but still making cars in a shed in Norfolk. It's incredible. What I like about that was that the stunt drivers couldn't get it to spin, so they went back to the Lotus guy who delivered the car and said, "We can't get it to spin." He went, "Hang on, then come with me," and drove it at, I think the quote was suicidal speeds around the road and got it to slide. But yeah, I get the impression though that James Bond producers don't quite appreciate how good cars are, because they had the same problem with the DB9 in Casino Royale, where when they're going through Millbrook, they thought that if they just did like Yelp test, they'd flip an Aston Martin, and they couldn't. They had to stick a rocket underneath it to get it to flip over. And then same thing with the Lotus. They went, well, we can't get it to slide. Well, no, that's because we bought a decent sports car. But yeah, it was great. Love the Lotus. The underwater bit, I can live for that. It was a bit silly.
No, it was cool though. It's like cool. You know, one of those moments, iconic film moments from childhood and so on. And when he comes out and does the typical Moore thing of dropping a fish out the window.
Yeah.
No, it's brilliant. So where, in the overall grand scheme of things, if you think that you'd not seen any Bond films after The Spy Who Loved Me, where would that rank for you?
Ooh. Majesty's Secret Service still up there. Probably third or fourth. Majesty's Secret Service and Live and Let Die would be
above it.
Above it.
Any of the Connery films that make it into number 3?
Goldfinger is amazing. Yeah, Goldfinger probably.
Okay, so this would be about 4 in your top. I think it's actually 10 by this time.
Yeah, this would be 4.
Because this is the 10th movie.
Yeah. No, that's right. Yeah, I think that's about right. I think it's really good. And going back to the Lotus thing, the whole just driving it to Pinewood Studios and leaving it there is classic. I mean, Talbot got in touch with Lotus and went, "Hiya, we'd like to do some rallying. Could you help us develop the Sunbeam for rallying?" And Lotus just went, "How much money have you got?" "This much." "Yes, well, give us all your money. Thanks. Here you go. Here's a 2.2 litre engine. Off you go." And they didn't help with any suspension or anything else. So all Talbot did was dump this 2.2 litre engine into a little hatchback. And off they went. And the Talbot Sunbeam Lotus is classic, iconic car that doesn't handle at all. It just goes really fast in a straight line.
Yeah, like a renegade Tesco trolley.
That's right. And the same with the DeLorean. John DeLorean, when he wasn't doing other things with money that he got off the British government, went to Lotus and said, "Can you help me develop this car? Because I want to build a sports car in Belfast," which is, of course, what the people of Northern Ireland wanted in the 80s. And Lotus again went, "Yeah, sure. How much money have you got?" "Okay, give us all your money. Here you go. Here's the Lotus XL. Use that." And another thing Lotus used to do was to avoid type approval. They'd call their car the same names but slightly different. So you had the Lotus
That's when you
Eclat.
have like the Esprit, the Elise, the
Yeah, well, you had the Lotus Eclat.
Milan.
Then you had the Eclat XL. Then you had the XL. 3 completely different cars, but with the same name. So they could turn around to US type approval and go, "Oh no, it's the same car." Really, it looks different. Yeah, look, it's got the same name. And yeah, I love things like that because you don't imagine that sort of thing happening now. 2 guys in their shed building these amazing cars. Colin Chapman was a genius, and Rosie shares her birthday was Colin Chapman. So yeah, it was. I like that, and I like that they used a British car that wasn't Aston Martin. So yeah, I love the fact it's a Lotus.
Yeah. So when you join us for The Spy Who Loved Me, it would be great before we get into that if we could get your 5-minute hot take on Moonraker. So will you put yourself through the truth grater? And but I promise you, hopefully it won't be as painful because we were pleasantly surprised. And also you get to see George again. So George is what he calls himself when he's on his days off.
Yeah.
And we'll get your sort of verdict on it because it'll be interesting. Yeah, I'm not going to say too much else.
No, I mean it's been a long time since I've seen it, so we'll give it a go to see what I think.
That's all I can ask for.
Yeah, and I can't insult it if I haven't seen it.
Exactly. Thank you, Rich.
No problem.
I'm going to let you finish your, I don't even know what it's called, but it's a Turkish sandwichy sort of thing. Hope you enjoyed that little bite-sized bit of Bondathon there ahead of the big event on Friday. Stay tuned for that. Make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and also it helps so much if you'd rate and review the show. And don't forget, you can get in touch either via the Instagram page or tailoringtalkpodcast@gmail.com. Have a great week and see you at the end of it for Moonraker.